Readers of God and Autobiography are fascinating people. They each have their own spiritual story. Take Ajit Das, lives in Lucknow, India. He's a graduate of the MIT of India, a man of mathematical facility, but also of great spiritual interest and depth. Let's meet Ajit now.
Something very interesting happened 2 days ago.
What is that?
I woke up at 4 in the morning.
Yes?
Unusual for me because normally I wake up at 7, and thoughts of how your book has influenced me were floating in my mind.
Yes?
And immediately I took out my phone and made notes of whatever thoughts there were in my mind at 4 in the morning.
Yes, yes.
And I think I'm going to share those thoughts with you today. So the first thing that came to my mind was that your book has taught me obedience towards God. It was so beautifully explained why obedience is required. Just like in a nation, you need to be obedient to the laws of the nation for the nation to progress. Similarly, we need to be obedient to God for His plan to progress.
Yes.
And that beautiful analogy in the book that it says that I'm like the sun that draws people in my direction.
Yes. The way plants turn to the sun.
Yeah, just like the way plants turn towards the sun.
Yeah.
And you know how that has translated into my life? I meditate every day.
Oh, you meditate. Good.
I meditate every day to clear the cloud of thoughts in my mind, to let in that light and to be automatically moved in the direction of God.
Yes.
In the direction of God's light.
Yes, yes.
So it's so beautiful to be.
The act of meditation sort of turns your soul Godward.
Yes.
So that the divine light can shine in, you might say,
and
orient your life.
It's not conscious throughout the day. It's happening unconsciously, just like a flower turns to the sun, also perhaps unconsciously.
Yes, yes. I was talking to some people who often are very spiritually wise, and
yes,
when I first had these experiences, I often find it very helpful.
Yes.
Since they had studied the lives of spiritual people and so forth.
Yes.
And anyway, these very spiritual people say, one of them said, it's a married couple, the husband said, there's never, he's thinking about God all the time. And I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm not nearly to that level of thinking about God all the time. I'm thinking about many things. But later I realized, and maybe this is something like your experience, Ajit, that, well, in a sense, I am thinking about God all the time in the same way, the analogy I use.
Yes.
I'm thinking about gravity all the time. I'm always aware of up and down. And if I step wrong, I'll fall. And and so God is a pervasive factor of my consciousness, always present in the something like the sun or something like gravity. You know, that keeping one's sense of what's up and what's down. And
very, very nice analogy.
Yeah.
The second thought that came to me was about guidance, and which is very much there in the book, that we must be guided by God. And there again, there's a beautiful analogy which kind of soaked into my mind and my being. Is we have to be like two singers singing in harmony.
Yes. And in spite of obedience, I was told, don't think of it as like the master sergeant giving orders to the private.
Right.
Think about it, because that's very alien. That's as if God were alien somehow and just bossy, just arbitrarily bossy. A kind of little dictator. But no, it's, and the part you cite comes where a corrective to that soldier taking marching orders idea of obedience, to two singers doing a harmony. Let's do a duet with God.
Yes.
Each day, live it as a duet with God.
So there are these gentle nudges that come from
That's
one
right.
to the other.
Yes.
And gentle nudge need not be, everybody kind of expects it's going to be a voice like that spoke to Jerry Martin.
Yes.
But sometimes it's not a voice. It may be the next article that you read that'll nudge you.
Exactly.
Or like the thoughts that came to my mind at 4 a.m. that nudged me to
yes.
come
Yes.
up with.
It can be it can seem like a stray thought, and yet it's a divine nudge. That is so important a point, Ajit, because my experience was so dramatic and vivid. Here I was a complete non-believer. I was not looking for divine nudges, and I don't think I would have noticed one.
Yeah.
But, so God spoke to me, and I think spoke to me in words, in part because he wanted me to write a book. That particular assignment I was given. But I do get people writing into my website that, oh no, I pray, God never speaks to me. And I feel, oh, but you're missing it. And Ajit, you've given the answer. You don't expect a voice. That's a sort of rare and odd thing, and it's no better than any other nudge, really. Whatever way God, just let God send divine signals to you, however God decides to do it. And it can be in a thought you have while waking up. It can be in a remark a friend makes to you, something you read. Or just a feeling inside where you suddenly feel, oh, here's something I need to do. Well, that can be divine guidance coming into your life.
So there was another third thought that came to me that morning.
Yes.
And that was that your book has so many philosophies in it, synopsis of so many philosophies. So I learned from I Ching, to be in harmony with nature, in harmony with the cosmic world.
Yes.
And from the Bhagavad Gita, one can learn right action. So I kind of feel, why can't anybody read these books for that particular thing?
Yes.
You want to be in harmony with nature, read I Ching. If you want to know something about right action, read the Bhagavad Gita, even though you may be some other religion.
Right. That's
which moves towards a universal theology for the whole world.
Yes.
We pick out the right things from everywhere and create a universal theology. Yes.
The crucial point in my prayers with God, my prayer life with God, was when I was told to go read the foundational scriptures, the ancient scriptures that inform the different cultures, and basically just to ask questions about what I was reading. But the main type of question was to ask God, what were you up to with, say, the ancient Chinese, the people who you were inspiring in the Bhagavad Gita or the Hebrew Old Testament, or, and some religions that I prayed about that have not survived very well, the Zoroastrian, the Revelations, the Egyptian, and as you're saying, God explained to me, I was wondering, why are there so many different ones, and they don't all say the same thing, except if you can abstract some generalizations, but other than that, they're really quite different. And it was that there are different aspects of the divine self that are being shown. And one aspect is harmony in nature, for example. And by one culture picking up on that, or particular authors picking up on that aspect of the divine nature, that enables the divine nature to fully actualize. It's a bit like you create a work of art, but you need someone to look at it and appreciate it, or it's not quite actualized. And so God was able to actualize these different aspects of the divine self, and also give us, in each culture, an access to the divine. But we're now at a point in human history where we're aware of the multiple cultures and the multiple traditions and philosophies and theologies and religions, and they don't have to compete, except that, well, you can't live everything, so you draw in the aspects that seem right for you, that seem right for Ajit, that seem right for, yeah.
Dead on, that individual actualization instead of a cultural actualization of a people.
Yes.
You can actualize yourself on different aspects now.
Yes, yes, yes. It seems to carry all the way down to the individual level. And just as one culture can't say to another how it's supposed to relate to the divine reality, because you can't quite take in everything.
Yes.
We're vessels who get full at a certain point. But one individual can't quite say to another, "Oh, this is the way you should relate to the divine reality." That's up to God.
Yes.
How God, and I experience the vibrant personal side of God, but that's not the only side. Like harmony in nature is another side of the divine reality that's just as real, just as important.
Yes.
So different people are going to have natural affinities, or the divine reality is going to show itself more vibrantly in one way than another, or another to a given individual.
Absolutely. It's the thought that is right now coming to me is all of them are like a bouquet of flowers. All the different philosophies.
Like a what?
Like a bouquet of flowers.
A bouquet of flowers. Yes, yes, that's right. Yes, and if you ever notice, I have no talent at flower arrangement, so I'm always a little bit amazed when I look at the florist who does really wonderful work with flowers. Is all different kinds of flowers and other little wispy things that aren't really flowers, but add something to the total, you might say, harmony, the visual harmony. Because harmony is never just one note. Think of the musical analogy, never just one note repeated, but it's a variety brought into harmony, a variety of musical notes, a variety of flowers brought into a harmony. And the divine and the fullest appreciation of the divine takes in that that full range of the aspects and appreciates them.
That's beautifully put. Now, the fourth thing that came to me is very, very amazing, is the mystery of God beyond God.
Right.
And that was so amazing in that book, to know that even God has a soul, and he unfurls himself out into a universe and goes back again and comes out again, and this process goes on forever.
That seemed to me actually upsetting. That was very upsetting. That's a point at which, when it came to me in prayer, I mean, the God book tells in creation about God sort of creating the world, and God creates the world as God is also at the same time part of the world, creating the world, kind of exploding into reality, from the Big Bang on, the world exploding, God exploding into full reality, into from infinitesimal point to a full universe in a microsecond, that God had done that more than once. And that was the God beyond God. And at that time, it obviously, you have a capacity I lacked at the time, in part because I had a whole lifetime as a non-believer. I had no framework for any of these concepts. But the idea, it just seemed enough to try to figure out God in our world and our relation to the God in our world. And suddenly, there's a God beyond God. And this world is just one of infinite worlds. And God does this again and again.
Yes.
With infinite permutations. So that, to take the flower bouquet analogy, the diversity is vast. It's just vast and endless. and yet is all part of the one divine reality of the God beyond God, who is orchestrating this. And what does that mean to you personally, the God beyond God?
Well, personally, it just means that we are made in the image of God.
Yes.
So if we have a soul, then God also must have a soul.
Yes, it does say that.
Yeah.
God has a soul, and yes, yes. Yeah, I think about that, made in the image of God. At one point I'm told, to my shock at the time, get more anthropomorphic.
Yes.
Because the great philosophers and the high theologians all warn against being anthropomorphic. You're supposed to get away from it. And of course, the warning is well taken if you think of God as an old man with a white beard who sits in a cloud, maybe a crown on his head or something like that. Well, that's not remotely an adequate way to understand God. Nevertheless, if we are made in God's image, that means God is anthropomorphic, or we are theomorphic, and so the translation would go in both directions. That means that God has some of the same character. We couldn't be made in God's image if God had none of the same characteristics we had.
Right, exactly.
And God can't love us unless God is a kind of loving person, and maybe we can't understand exactly what divine love would be like because we're not on that side of the interaction. But nevertheless, it'd be quite real. It would be quite real, and it would have some resemblance to what it is when a human being loves.
Absolutely. So the book has also reaffirmed a couple of beliefs that I had, which I had contemplated.
Yes.
And some of the things that I had contemplated, why did creation happen? And your book says that God wanted some facticity. He wanted some
yes, exactly.
So, because a lot of people must be asking, why did this happen?
That's right. In fact, it's almost a paradox or self-contradiction in classical theology of God as a perfect being, self-sufficient, often said self-sufficient. Well, why would a perfect self-sufficient being create a world that's why does such a being even need there to be anything else in the universe? Why do you need a world at all? Why do you need people at all? And then secondarily, and here's where the contradiction seems to come in, it's an imperfect world, and we are imperfect people. So, why would God do that? If you make the assumption that God is a kind of internal, unchanging, self-sufficient, it almost empties out into being a bit irrelevant. that concepts become so abstract and the kind of being that you can hardly imagine doing anything like answering prayer or interacting or directing our lives. It becomes a very abstract thing. And the God of the God book, the God who speaks to me, is quite real. And the point you're raising, Ajit, it's philosophically subtle. One has to kind of think about it, but you can think of the ideal airplane, and the ideal airplane might have metal that has no metal fatigue, for example, that has none of the properties that actual planes are made of. Well, that's not a real airplane at all. And that's an airplane in a diagram. And I suppose some of the diagrams are probably just perfect, but they're not real. And yet you make them real, and then they do have metal fatigue. They react to wind, surface pressure, and so
forth. Example is coming to me to explain this theology, for example, is supposing you're both tall and short. You can't experience both at the same time. So somebody has to be tall and somebody has to be short.
Right,
right?
right.
And then you can reverse roles, that the person who is tall becomes short.
Yes.
And the person who is short becomes tall.
Yes.
And you experience being short and tall.
Yes. Yes. But I think that's one of it's as I say, it's a subtle point in the book.
Yes.
And yet I think you're right to pick it out, Ajit. It's fundamental to understanding everything about the world, that the world has rough edges.
Yes.
And in classic, at least in the Christian tradition, in classic theology, it's very hard to explain. It seems like a flaw. It seems like God's fault, like a mistake. Like it wasn't this what did they say? Not a feature, but a glitch or a mistake. It just seems like a design mistake. But no, it's to be real. Things have to be put into material form.
Yes.
That actually means form that is going to have rough edges, is going to be subject to the laws of entropy, to friction, that you're not going to glide through the earth with no friction. And therefore all the imperfections that come from being a real material object and subject to real material forces, including all the forces of that shatter things and degrade them, make them fall apart.
The thought is coming. The thought that is coming to me, that you have to be all the parts individually, one by one, to become the whole.
Yes.
So maybe you are everything, but like all the 7 colors of the rainbow, which make up white.
Yes.
You've got to be all the 7 colors one by one. So if you're yellow, you're not incomplete. You're maybe not imperfect. You're just experiencing yellow at the moment. And you will experience red later on.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And to all 7, you become white. You've experienced everything that you are.
Yeah.
But you've got to do it one by one.
Yeah.
To experience it. You can't do it all together, because then that'll be white.
Yes.
You know your individual parts.
Yes. And so the individual needs some element of patience.
Yes.
Some element of patience. You can't be everything at once.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you should never regret being what you are.
Yeah. It's one path through the world.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes, but ideally you learn from your mistakes too.
True.
And it's almost as if there's some place, I'm told, and it's very puzzling to me, you need to live out the life you're living, and to the nth degree.
Absolutely.
And that means even if it's a life that has certain problems, that's your challenge in this life, is to live out the life of someone with those particular, maybe difficult temperament, for example, or a physical disability, or circumstantial problem, that your family is very poor, or your father is an alcoholic and beats everybody. These are the tasks of life, and you have to live that out.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
And therefore acceptance becomes one of the key things, key attitudes one has to have for others and for oneself as well.
Yes, yes. And you have to figure out what are the challenges of this life. And one of the keys seems to be simple truthfulness. Recognize them for what they are. Don't deflect, don't pretend, don't try to rise above it in the way that means you're neglecting the actual challenges. I mean, that's itself a kind of spiritual mistake that some people make. But meet each of your challenges, including your own problems and the problems of those around you. Face them truthfully, and live out that life story truthfully. and you will have done the right thing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you will have done the right thing.
Great advice.
Yes, yes. Let me ask a little bit, Ajit. I don't want to interrupt if there was more you had to say, but
No.
I think it would be useful to talk about, you live in Lucknow, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, India.
Yes, in India.
And where did you go to college? To like the MIT of India, is that right?
Yes, yes. It's called the Indian Institute of Technology, and in a city next to Lucknow called Kanpur.
Okay. And you have some flair for mathematics, I gather. You know.
I did a master's in mathematics.
Yes, yes. And
my key interest still was knowing more about life.
Yes.
I did a lot of reading. That's how I came across your book over the 30 years that I've been searching the meaning of life.
Okay.
Your book was really profound.
Did that start, was that even when you were at the university?
No.
Or a little later in life?
After university.
Uh-huh.
Few years after university, I had some health problem.
Uh-huh.
I said, I've got to solve this by some way, and no doctor could solve that health problem. So when I turned to knowing about life, I went into yoga and meditation of different types. And
because some of these are helpful to one's health, correct?
Yes.
Some of the spiritual practices have direct
Absolutely.
benefits for health because we're mind, body, spirit combined.
True. Yeah. So progressively, I was helped by different techniques. Each technique had a different effect on me, and I practiced all of it, and I continue to practice all of it. And I feel very light every day, and I keep telling people being light and divinely charged is what is enlightenment.
Yes.
It's not sitting on a mountaintop and meditating 24 hours a day.
Right.
That's your book talks about that as going over the deep end of spirituality.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. God is showing God's self through the different traditions, through the different religions, but that doesn't mean they all got everything right.
Yeah.
And certain aspects of Hinduism and of some other traditions very much oriented to, with you might say, withdrawing from worldly interests and meditating and becoming pure, have that problem of no, life is to be lived here in this rough-hewn world, and not by just withdrawing from it. And that's a spiritual mistake that almost religious people are more prone to than other people. Other people are prone to other mistakes. Religious people are somewhat prone to the mistake that I need to be a pure soul, withdraw, do nothing but meditate, have no worldly interest at all. But no, that's not quite right.
Mm-hmm. So the thought of this being light came to me very recently. I was at a place where Buddha left his body. It's called Kushinagar. It's 5 hours from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a video on where a quote from Buddha said that you have to find salvation in this life.
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering, what does he mean by salvation?
Yes.
And a thought came to me immediately. It's being light every moment, not being fazed by anything.
Uh-huh.
So as I was talking to you, I'm in New York City right now.
Yes.
As talking to you, there was a message that there's a massive fire somewhere close to me.
Oh,
and
my
I
goodness.
hear the sirens of all the fire engines going, but I was unfazed,
Yes.
I was completely unfazed.
Yes.
Because I couldn't see any fire around.
Right.
You have to be cautious.
Yes.
But still you can be unfazed.
Yes. Yes. No, that's a nice point. One has to be both realistic, prudent, cautious,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so forth, and yet maintain one's equilibrium
Absolutely.
at those moments. Maintain the equilibrium, keep them in perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the messages from the God in Autobiography about, I don't know how much the concept of salvation comes up, but there's certainly parts of it that I think speak to that question. And it's much to go back to your earlier analogy, Ajit. It's very much like the flowers turning toward the sun. We do that in this life, and it's to live this life with our attention, in a Godward way, which means taking in the divine light, proceeding with whatever bits of guidance we can find and discern in our lives, trying to do the right thing. But it's very different from the kind of view that I was given as a child, that, we're all full of sin, and then we want Christ or something to save us from that, to pay that debt or something like that. But what I was told, no, there is such a thing as sin. We do make mistakes, do the wrong thing fairly often, but if you, this solution isn't to have someone else die or whatever, it's for you to stop sinning. It's really very direct. So if you've been an alcoholic and that's led you to be abusive, stop drinking and stop being abusive. And maybe you owe an apology to some people.
I believe
that does it.
I believe that being stuck on anything is the real sin.
Yes.
That example that I was giving, you have to be all the colors. So if you're stuck on yellow, then it's a sin because you're not doing the entire journey.
You're not moving on.
You're not moving on.
Yes, I was told the sin is to wallow in guilt.
Yeah, that's also
think, oh no, I'm the worst person in the world. I occasionally hear someone use that expression, I'm the worst person in the world. And I think, what are you talking about? That's almost self-flattery. You're not close to the number one evil person. But to wallow in that, you need to change your behavior, see what led you to go wrong so that you correct the conditions, make sure you don't get in those circumstances again.
Absolutely.
Learn, draw the lessons.
Yes.
But after that, you just move on. That bad behavior is in the past, your future is in front of you. And as long as you continue doing your best, you don't even have to be perfect in following divine guidance, because we don't have perfect sensors for what the divine is telling us. But we just, as long as you're going along doing your best in a Godward way, like the flowers turning to the sun, you're fine. There's no other salvation problem.
The guidance I give to my daughter is the name of a song which she loves. It's called Keep Marching On.
Keep marching on. Yes, exactly. Well, Ajit, our time is already about up.
Absolutely. I enjoyed my conversation with you. It's really enlightening.
Yes. Well, you're the most, I don't know if anyone has read the book more carefully and more insightfully than you have, Ajit. And so, that's a pleasure and a blessing as well. And so bless you, and you be well.
Bless us all.
Yeah.
Thank you.